Hello and welcome to this week's YouTube video. Every 4 weeks I do a Procreate video where I try and transfer my fine art painting skills to Procreate. This week I thought I'd show you how I painted the recent one of Fin, my dog, looking super relaxed as he lies on the bed. Before I show you the video, let me tell you the brushes I used to paint this. From Procreate I used the wet acrylic and the turpentine brush. From Photoshop, I used the Oil Rich brush. This is one of Kyle T. Webster's brushes found in the Creative Cloud subscription. You can save these brushes and download them into Procreate. It's trial and error though, as not all Photoshop brushes work that well. This one does. I also used a couple of brushes that I bought from Tip Top Brushes in their Pro Oil pack. These were the Blend Stump Wax brush and the Fine Wet Liner. Let me just quickly show you the reference photo that I used. Notice that I have had to do quite a bit of editing to the duvet cover. I would not recommend trying to paint something so complex. Instead, I focused on the colours that I liked, such as that pretty blue on this side. I've also edited out my folds on this side and just suggested a selection of colours. Notice how those folds detract from Fin. I wanted to keep my areas of highest contrast next to each other, so light and dark. Those folds only dilute that contrast, so I took them out. It's the same on this side. I've edited out those lighter areas because they would detract the eye from this area here. Let's now have a look at the video. A simple way to make sure you get your drawing correct and make sure it remains correct is to draw around your reference photo and then place the line drawing on a separate layer at the top in your layers panel. You'll then be able to toggle on and off at various points during the painting. I've done this drawing on 10 layers. You'll see I've done the bulk of it on this first layer and then just built it up gradually. Sometimes I do my paintings all on one layer and sometimes multiple layers. The majority of my brushes are wet brushes. They move pixels around quite easily. The rule of thumb I go by is once I start to struggle to control those pixels, i.e. they just keep moving around way too much, and I want a bit of stability to my strokes, I start a new layer. Notice how my strokes behave themselves much better when I start a new layer. So think about the effects you are trying to get. If I want soft and expressive, I will try and do all my strokes on one layer. If I want something a bit more controlled, I'll start a new one. But to start with, I try to get a good sense of Fin on my first layer. I am using the wet acrylic, the turpentine brush and the Blend Stump Wax brush. The Blend Stump Wax brush gives these lovely wet expressive strokes. But you need to sort of stab at the screen and then flick your strokes in the direction that you want. Here I am trying to create that sense of movement that I can see in the photo. So in the early stages, I am making sure that I am laying large strokes that all suggest that direction. Notice how a lot of this movement captured in the early stages is preserved in the final artwork. So once you've established that movement, you need to be careful not to overwork it. At this point, I start a new layer and begin to work on Fin. I need to pay particular attention to my edges at this point. I need to decide where I want hard, soft and lost edges. Notice that my hard edges are here and here, my soft edges here and my lost edges on this far side. How do I decide where to place these? I squint at my reference photo. The edges that I can see clearly are my hard edges. If I can see them a little bit, I'll soften them, and where I can't see them at all, I will lose them. This is a really good technique for ensuring that you get them in the right place. What brush should I use? All of my brushes give different marks. At this stage of the painting, I'll need to use a wet one, so either the turpentine brush, the Blend Stump Wax brush or the Oil Rich brush. The turpentine brush gives more of a streaky effect and the other two are a bit more blocky. So it just depends what marks I'm trying to make. Here I want something a bit more blocky, so I use the Oil Rich and Blend Stump Wax brush to fix my edges around Fin. I used them on various transparencies. Before I lay a stroke, I always err on the side of caution and turn down my opacity to around 60%. I lay a stroke, see how it looks, and if it needs to be heavier, I turn it up a bit. How do I see colour? I know that my reference photo was taken in northern light because the window is north facing. The rule is cool light equals warm shadows. So I know that these areas here will be warm in temperature, and as I move out of the shadows, I move into these lovely cool areas here. I have a few warm flecks in the light fur, but on the whole my highlights will be white. White is a cool colour. Just remember, when dealing with the northern light, your shadows will always be warm, and as they move out of the shadows, it will become cooler. But what is warm and what is cool? The easiest way to remember this is that your red is your warmest colour on the colour wheel. Blue is the coolest. As we move away from red, colours become cooler. Everything is relative to what is next to it. Yellow is a warm colour, but when it is placed next to red and orange, it would look cooler. White is also a cool colour. So it's worth noting on our colour picker as we move towards our whites for red, yellow and orange, our colours become cooler. Notice for our warmer colours, the left side of our colour picker is always cooler. The right side is both warmer and the colour is more saturated. For our cooler colours, the left side of the colour picker is more muted and the right side is more saturated. Always think, is the colour I want to lay warmer or cooler than the colour it is next to? So for example, if I were using this orange and I wanted to lay a cooler yellow, I would just move my colour picker towards yellow and then move my slider to the left a little, depending upon how much cooler it was. Don't forget about your value. By value, I mean how dark or light is your colour. The slider here controls my value. Once you've figured out your temperature, then adjust according to how dark or light it is. So going back to my cool yellow as an example, if it were darker, I'd move down. If it were lighter, I'd move the slider up. So to recap then, light, dark, muted, saturated. Depending upon the colour, cool, warm. Always try to deal with colour by splitting it up into temperature and then value. It will make it easier for you. You really need to judge the colour of your photo by eye. If it helps, print out your reference photo. Looking at photos on a screen always skew your colours. Notice that I have changed my colours from my photo. Up here I have gone more blue and down here I have tried to suggest all the colours a little. Judging the colours by eye will give you much more freedom to play about with them than if you use the colour picker to tell you what they are. Remember, we are artists and are trying to interpret what we are seeing. We are trying to get our viewers to see what we see from our own unique perspectives. Here I have painted Finfin's contentment and his extreme relaxation in incredibly beautiful light. That is what I see. So do not try to copy your reference picture exactly because you will not then capture the emotional subtleties present in the photo. What colour palette have I used? The colours I have selected for Finfin have been in the orange, orange-yellow and yellow-green colour picker. All my colours have been on this side of my colour picker, so they are cool temperatures. Remember what I said about cool light equals warm shadows. This is my warmest shadow, so I have used my cool oranges. The shadow on his face is not as warm as the shadow on his chest and foot, so I moved to my cool yellow-greens. Look at where yellow-green is on the colour wheel. Because it is further away from red, a cool yellow-green on my colour picker will always look cooler than a cool orange. So look at your shadows and decide how warm they are and move up and down your colour picker accordingly. As I move across the duvet, I get cooler still. I go from green to green-blue. I use some saturated blues too, just to give it a bit of lovely colour. This side is warmer. I am back to my cool oranges again, but notice this section here is warmer than this section here. I've used yellow greens for that light shoulder area. Everything is relative to what is next to it, and understanding temperature is very important for a piece of artwork like this that is so absent in saturated colour. How should I lay my brush strokes? It's very important for this sort of painting to lay lots of transparent brush strokes. If I turn on each individual layer, you'll see how I build up the painting gradually. I usually have my opacity turned down to about 60% and then adjust from there. It's really important to understand the marks that your brushes make. Experiment with them. Try pressing lightly, then hard. Try rigorous hand actions, then gentle. Try stabbing at the screen or flicking actions just like this. See how the strokes change when you paint all on one layer compared to starting new layers. It's really important to make a variety of marks at a variety of transparencies. You don't want to use the same brush, you need to create variety. And that is the finished painting. I hope you have enjoyed today's video and found it useful. Please like and subscribe if you can, and check out my website sarahhallidayart.com, where you will find examples of my work and also details of online classes that I run. Thank you for watching and see you for the next one.